Wake up, John.
What? Oh, I was looking out the window.
Yeah. I'm over here.
Well, we would like to welcome all of you who are going to see this videotape to a little session that we set up with Miss Cooper to learn something about her past and some of the things that she's passed on to us, so that it adds a little something new to our reunion and to our memories. So I guess I'd like to start off. I have a list of questions that Miss Cooper is going to address, and she has some remarks that she's made some notes on, and we're going to start right in with this little presentation. Miss Cooper, what led you to Ypsilanti and to teach at Roosevelt?
Well, in 1936, President Munson decided to hire Miss Thelma Hunt, who was teaching at Ionia. And at the end of the day, the superintendent at Ionia asked where he was going to find a Latin teacher. And President Munson recommended me in 1936, at the time that Art Walker married Miss Regal, who was the previous Latin teacher. And then in 1946, he called me up again. He knew I was still in Ionia and asked me to come to Roosevelt to teach.
Okay. Next, we'd like to know a little bit about your childhood. What kind of childhood did you have? And please tell us a little bit about your family in the process.
All right. My mother was 42 when I was born, and I was the 9th in the collection of Coopers. She was 45 when my father died, so that I had a somewhat complicated childhood financially. And when we moved up to Houghton, Mother went to the bank one day, and my father had been a director of the bank. And when she went into the bank, she fainted. So my youngest brother and I had to do quite a lot of the banking from then on, because she never did go back into the bank. She wasn't really a frantic person at all, but this was one thing that she just didn't do. And when I was in the 4th grade, I had a very good friend who had several contagious diseases, and I used to go down to her house to help her make up her work. And one time when I was doing this, her father, who ran the local laundry, usually settled into a comfortable chair in the living room and fell asleep. But this particular evening, he got up and came out into the dining room, and he said, "Why don't you plan on teaching?" Well, this was the first time I had ever had anybody suggest this. And when I was in the 6th grade, there was a girl whose name was Anastasia Staskievitz, who came to our school after both of her parents had been killed in an automobile accident. She had never diagrammed a sentence in her life, and we were diagramming noun clauses as objects of prepositions when we were in the 6th grade. So I used to go to the principal's office every afternoon for half an hour to teach Anastasia Staskievitz how to diagram. So I guess this was really the beginning of my teaching career. And my mother was a very remarkable person who was really a combination of pioneering and elegance. And she, one of the things that she had done when she was a girl living out at Eagle River was that the whole family sat down in the evening at a library table and read, because there was nothing else to do with an evening in Eagle River out in the Keweenaw Peninsula. Whenever they didn't know the meaning of a word, they just looked in the dictionary. And Mother used to do a wonderful job of explaining the meanings of words to me when I was studying. Another thing that she did was talk about some old sayings every once in a while, and some of these had a lot of wisdom in them. For instance, she said, it's better the devil you do know than the devil you don't. And I realize that there are some people who look and act angelic, and they are really villains, and we need to be careful about them. When I was a youngster, Mother was very good about teaching me how to cook. And I used to cream the butter and add the sugar, and then finally she let me put in the eggs, and I gradually got to baking things. And she had a very good way of teaching me how to make a cream sauce. And she said if I would melt the butter and then set the pan into a pan of cold water so it cooled off, then I could add the flour to it and add the milk, and then I would have a perfectly smooth cream sauce. Well, this is as good a way to teach a youngster to make smooth cream sauce and smooth gravy as I ever heard of. There were a great many people in Houghton who, during the good mining days, who had come from Boston and New York, and a number of them were so very, very kind to me that it was very easy to learn respect and love for older people. And it's interesting that as a result of all this and my financial situation, I could get along just fine with my college students from Grosse Pointe, and I can also understand anyone who could not afford to buy a ballpoint pen. And this helped me to work with a lot of different kinds of students. Mother was very fine about teaching us to be generous and kind to people, and if we ever forgot to say thank you when we should have, she simply reminded us that this was something we should be thanking someone for. In 1918, we had the Spanish influenza going about, and in 1921, when I was in the 5th grade, I had encephalitis lethargica, which is a weird name for a brain infection. And there were 6 cases in Houghton at the time. 2 of these people died. 2 of them spent the rest of their lives in the state hospital, and 2 of them, or some boy and I rather, recovered. I had a very Irish roommate in Ionia who said to me one time when I said this, she was a very humorous individual, and she said, "You just think you recovered." But at any rate, after I had encephalitis lethargica, my hair came out by the handful, and this particular disease affects your saliva while you have it. So it ruined my front teeth, and when I had taught for 1 year, I had to have my front teeth extracted. Well, now, so far as my family is concerned, my oldest sister made a notebook when I was born, and she was 16 at the time I was born. And it was just a plain grammar notebook, but she put down a lot of details about things, and one of them is some pictures that were taken when I was quite young. And I think maybe I might turn these around. Is this a good place for them?
That might help a little bit.
Okay, can you kind of...
You want them straight up and down?
Straight, yeah.
These are pictures of me in my father's arms and in my oldest brother's arms, and they were the last pictures that were taken of me with as long dresses as this. Can you imagine doing this kind of ironing for a baby? And a little while ago, we had a contest at the Methodist Church And by the way, I forgot to bring the picture of that today, but there was a picture of me when I was 3 years old, and these were mostly baby pictures. And believe it or not, I won the first prize for this. And in this picture, I think one reason why it got a first prize was that I was wearing Arctics that came all the way to my knees because of all the snow in the copper country. As I said, there were 9 children in my family, and 8 of them grew up. My oldest sister, one of them, by the way, died when she was born. My oldest sister had a canteen during World War I, and she used to have this out at Michigan Tech when there were a lot of students that were living in tents on the campus. And I used to take sandwiches every little while out to this canteen. Then in 1924, when I was about to be a sophomore in high school, I went to Chicago to visit my oldest sister. She didn't have so very much money when she was a secretary in the YWCA in Chicago, so we used to ride around in double-decker buses and saw a lot of Chicago. We went to the Field Museum, and one time when we were going around in Chicago, we went over the bridge from which Loeb and Leopold, who had committed what they thought was a perfect crime, had thrown their typewriter off this bridge. Later on, a member of the Leopold family went to Michigan Tech, and he was so ashamed of what his brother had done that he changed his name to Lowell, which is another Jewish name. But he had thought it was very unkind of people to blame him for what his brother had done. My second oldest sister took what was called a limited certificate when she finished high school. And this was really limited because she went to summer school for only 6 weeks and then taught kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and home economics. She died at Christmas time of this past year at the age of 88 and a half. And I had written her every day since 1946. And this turns out to be one of my many hobbies. My mother had said to me quite often, "Will you please write a letter to somebody or other and tell the person something?" So I got into the habit of talking on paper. I had 5 brothers, and they did more really to make a debate coach out of me than anyone else than any debate coach has ever done. And another nice thing that my youngest brother did was that when I was in the 8th grade, he taught me to dance. Each evening we would dance to one record after supper so that I knew how to dance before I went to high school. And this brother of mine also had something to do with the story of my problems with arithmetic when I was a youngster. When I was in the 4th grade, he was in the 9th grade. And he said to my mother quite kindly one day, he wasn't being sarcastic, but he said, "If you change a problem from Johnny to Jimmy and from 40 cents to 60 cents, she doesn't know what she's doing." And he was absolutely right. And eventually, when I was 16 years old and taking physics in high school, I came to one fine day about doing math. And this can give hope to anybody who isn't especially mathematical in school. I did a problem about a car that went so many miles in 17 minutes. And I was supposed to find out how many miles per hour this car was going. Well, ordinarily, my face used to turn absolutely white at the thought of a thought problem, which is now a story problem. But I had to figure out how to do this, and I decided that if I could find out how far a car went in one of those 17 minutes, I could multiply that times 60. And ever since then, I've been doing math problems and thought problems. Well, now, so far as my 5 brothers were concerned, one of them ended up being the vice president for personnel in the New York Telephone Company. One was the manager of Detroit Edison in Ann Arbor for years. A third one had a remarkably fine legal mind, but my father died when he was a freshman in college, and so he never had a chance to be a lawyer. And he was with the Pure Oil Company and did a lot of investigations for them. A fourth brother ran an insurance office in Detroit. And my 5th brother was an engineer at AIRIM during World War II. Previously, he had been with the Iron Fireman Stoker Company in Chicago and used to go out in the middle of the night to get people's furnaces going. 3 of my brothers could fix anything, and the other 2 couldn't fix anything. When it came to the matter of my going to college, my oldest sister said to me one day, "What would you really like to do?" And I said, "What I'd really like to do is teach Latin." So she said that she would talk to 2 of my brothers. My brother Stuart, who was with the New York Telephone Company, and my brother Gage, each sent me $20 a month. So I had the great sum of $40 and spent $37.50 on room and board. I had $2.50 left with which to get stationery and toothpaste and stamps, and if I wanted a chocolate sundae, this cost the great sum of 10 cents, but you couldn't get very many of those when all you had left over was $2.50. One of my brothers thought that I should learn how to manage money, so he wanted to send me the $20 a month for the entire year, and I told him I had too little left over, and he had better send me the money every month. So this is, I guess, the story of my family.
Well, Ms. Cooper, for those of us that know you, we're grateful for that very delightful and thorough and colorful account of your past, and I learned a few things about you in there that I didn't know before, and I'm sure other people that see this will feel the same way. That's a very, very interesting story. The next item on our list here is kind of gets a little bit more into some of your personal feelings. The question here is, what are your hobbies?
Well, my hobbies really are, perhaps my first one is picking thimbleberries during the summer. I've been going north every summer and making thimbleberry jam, and now I've had to stop doing that because there's a tiny wasp which makes a green nest about this big around at the intersection of the stem of the plant and the stem of the leaf, and they're taking all the nourishment out of the thimbleberries. So I've had to make snack mix with plenty of peanuts in it to keep my friends and relatives happy now that I can't send them any more thimbleberry jam. I find that I get quite a lot of telephone calls asking for cookies for quite a number of purposes, and I'm still baking them as a hobby. I love movies when they aren't violent ones, and I don't like sea stories because somebody is always drowning or dying of thirst. But one of the pleasures of retirement is to be able to read, to have time to read the Free Press and other newspapers. One of the things that I love every summer is going to Roosevelt reunions. And I guess probably that just plain helping people turns out to be one of my hobbies.
Very good. But while you're talking about reunions, let me, on behalf of the class of '66, we would like to invite you to our 50th reunion, which will be 5 years from now. So I want to make sure you save us a spot on your calendar.
Well, I turned 81 in April, so I'm not sure I'll make it to that.
I don't think we have any doubt about being at that reunion. So, well, thank you for those remarks. Ms. Cooper, you were certainly involved in educating in many different ways. Everyone that's going to see this tape, at least the people that went to Roosevelt, not counting the spouses, and we're involved in giving these people grades of some type. And one of the questions that has come up is sort of tongue-in-cheek. What kind of grades did you get in high school, and what were your favorite subjects?
Well, my favorite subjects were Latin and English, and so far as my grades were concerned, I got 2 C's in high school and 2 C's in college. So I used to feel as if I were failing anybody to whom I gave a C for a while, but then I did get over that and managed to
well,
give
now, all you people that just heard that, don't get out of the room, get up and walk out of the room. There's still hope for you. Okay.
Well, John, she said she got over it, but I never got over it.
I never got over it. I just snuck in and changed my grade when she wasn't looking. So, okay. Ms. Cooper, what are some of your fondest memories of the class of 1966?
Well, I tell you, I have really a lot of them, but the one that I think really covers the whole thing is I have 2 things. One is that when you had your reunion in the year 1986, your 20th reunion, you gave me the most wonderful thing. And it's still in just beautiful condition. This is framed in brass, and it says June 28, 1986. And in it, you expressed your thanks to me. I don't know whether you'd like me to read it, but it isn't
Please
so
do.
very long.
Please do it.
On the occasion of our 20-year class reunion, we would like to express our deep appreciation for the interest you took in our education and in us personally. Your guidance in and out of the classroom will always be an inspiration to all of us. And this is signed the Roosevelt class of '66. And that's about as nice as anything I ever received. Now, so far as your class is concerned, I think my fondest memory is of the Christmas party that you had in 1965. It happened that the day that we were doing this interview the first time, the Calders appeared in the dining room at the Radisson. And it was so opportune that they did, because during your senior year, they let us borrow a sleigh which was kept up on the rafters of their garage. And I sent some of you, when you were seniors, to lift it down very tenderly. And I thanked them in 1991 for doing this. Another wonderful thing that happened about that party was that Polly Cooch asked her father if he would please cut down a great big Christmas tree in their yard for the 3rd of December, instead of waiting until spring, when he was going to cut it down to make a patio in the backyard. This tree was wonderfully tall, and we put it up in the gym, and then 10 days after the party was over, the Eastern Echo came out with an article that said that no Christmas trees at parties were to be more than 10 feet high. Mary Elliott and her crew brought a lot of boxes that they wrapped in beautiful Christmas paper, and they put them into the sleigh. And that particular evening, Dr. and Mrs. Sponberg came to our party, which was one of 7 Christmas parties they went to that night. And they were very impressed with the beauty of the decorations and that Christmas tree. In the meantime, I had been out in the hall closing lockers, and I had been shoveling the dust with a dustpan out of the closet at the end of the gym, while all of you had been doing all this artistic decorating. Well, it happened that this spring, Rick Sprague from your class was at the funeral home at the time that his father had died. When I discovered that he was there, I went in to see him, and he said that Polly Cooch, who has been his wife for years, would be very disappointed to think that she wasn't able to come to Ypsilanti. She had gone to Japan a little while before when her brother was in a play over there, and so she wasn't able to make the trip to Ypsilanti also. And so I told him, he said I should come to see them if I ever came to Oregon, and I said I had never been to Oregon nor Washington, the state of Washington, and so I was just going to go out there sometime. And he said, if you come to Portland, you can stay at our house and you can stay forever. And this was real cordiality.
Well, that's very good. That's very enlightening, and nice to hear that you have so many fond memories of the class of '66 and the people in it. Ms. Cooper, let me see on my list here. Some of us would like to know who were your favorite colleagues at Roosevelt.
Well, it's very difficult to pin this down to just a few people because I thought a lot of the faculty. But Mr. Welper and Miss Gotts were wonderful class sponsors to work with. And Mr. McDonald, of course, is absolutely priceless, and he always has been. And Miss Rankin also was another real favorite.
Okay. Ms. Cooper, would you have changed anything in the Roosevelt curriculum if you had been given the chance?
Well, I really don't think that I would have, because our students were able to go to advanced math classes at Eastern, and they could take advanced courses in French over at Eastern, and Duncan Magoon, for instance, was able to go on taking some more years of Latin. And these things would have supplemented our curriculum if we hadn't had Eastern for you to go to.
Very good. Ms. Cooper, what were your favorite subjects that you taught at Roosevelt? What was your favorite subject?
Well, my favorite subject was Latin, partly because I'm very fond of it, and partly because it took so little preparation, and that gave me time to prepare for the English and world history and social studies that I also taught.
Okay. Let's see. I'm sure people would like to know, what have you been doing with yourself since you retired from Roosevelt?
Well, it's been absolutely great. I love retirement, and at various times I've been the secretary or the treasurer of the Gilbert Auxiliary, which has a tea every month down at the Gilbert residence. And I have enjoyed being able to read the Free Press and the Ann Arbor News and the Ypsilanti Press. And I've been tutoring some athletes from Eastern, and at present I have a student who's going to Ann Arbor Huron High who is reading so many books that it keeps me reading until midnight most nights in order to be able to keep up with him. And I've been trying to convert him to using the dictionary, and a little while ago I read to the 23rd meaning of the word quarter, which means a lot of other things besides 25 cents or a quarter of a bushel. And I finally found the meaning of what it means to surrender without quarter, and this means without any mercy from the enemy. And one of the words, for instance, that I had to look up for sure was troglodytic, in the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And this means brutish. Well, when I mentioned this to Mr. Knisley, who goes to the Methodist Church, he said, why sure, a troglodyte is a caveman. So when Mr. and Mrs. McDonald came up from Morenci and took me out to lunch, I was telling them about my adventures with this word troglodytic. And before I got through with the story, Mr. McDonald said, well, you know, a troglodyte is a caveman. Well, I hadn't expected to find two people who knew this, and when I asked Peter Fletcher, who is noted for his tremendous vocabulary, he didn't even know what troglodytic means. So we had quite a time with that one. And I'm planning this summer to go up to Chassel on the way to, it's just very near Houghton, it's only 8 miles from Houghton, and I'm going to blow the money that I have made tutoring this year by staying in this wonderful bed and breakfast place in Chassel.
I might just add that that is the reason that you won't be able to be at our
Yes.
reunion this year. We're very, very sorry that you won't be there, but we're happy that you can do your annual trek northward.
Well, thank you very much, and it's wonderful to be able to do this interview, so you will feel as if I'm there in one form or another at your reunion.
We just have a couple more, Ms. Cooper. One that is not really on the list, but I just kind of like to ask this. A lot of people value your advice. If I were to ask you to the people of Roosevelt that you've had as students in the past on any subject, what kind of advice would you give them about life and living? What would that advice be?
Well, it seems to me that honesty and thorough preparation for what they're doing, and if they can learn to love what they are doing, this is a whole lot better than being bored stiff when you go to work. And I've been so impressed with the number of things that our students have said at class reunions about what they do remember from their high school. And I think one of the things that about teaching grammar to them is that so many of you have been able to go on teaching this to your children when it really isn't the style anymore to know much grammar, but it still is very convenient. And in the past just very few days, I've met two students. In fact, I saw one girl from the class of 1959 who said, it's so nice to see you still walking around. I don't know what she thought was going to happen to me by now, but I saw a Blattenberger girl last Friday night at Kroger's, and she was so glad to see me. I didn't have any idea who she was, but she knew who I was. And yesterday I saw Susan Lee at the Kroger store, and she was just as pleased as the rest of them are, and this makes me very happy about my teaching at Roosevelt.
Well, that's very good. We're very happy to have had you as a teacher, Ms. Cooper. The last point we have is, how would you most like to be remembered?
Well, I guess I would like to be remembered as I have been. And to me, it's just remarkable the number of students who have expressed appreciation when they didn't even have to. It wasn't called for in the conversation at all, and it's pretty remarkable.
Well, I think it's fair to say that you bring good qualities out in people, and we're all grateful to you for that.
Well, I hope that that's the way it is. I don't think you felt too compelled to do these things right. And for instance, when I was studying in the mental health course that Dr. Himmler gave, he was talking about people who have encephalitis lethargica, and he said so many children who have it lose all sense of right and wrong. And I think, if anything, my sense of right and wrong was exaggerated instead of disappearing.
Well, I think there were people in Roosevelt who lost their sense of right and wrong, but those are mostly the underclassmen in our... Well, I don't have anything else on our list. If any of the other people on the committee would like to add anything or ask any more questions, or Ms. Cooper, if there's anything more you'd like to say, I guess this concludes the interview, and we'd like to thank you on behalf of the class of '66. I'd like to thank you for being here to do this and for leaving this legacy.
I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and Pat's lunch was just absolutely great today to start
Certainly
this
was.
off.
Very good. You could probably kill it with